Hi everyone, I'm Lee from True Silver and welcome to Interviews with Insight, where I take 10 minutes out to get some insights from some fantastic business people, giving a bit of a background into their field and hopefully something you can relate to or learn from in some way. This week my guest is about to celebrate a year in business. His name is Tom Nash, also known as Mr. Divorce Coach from Melior Minds. Tom, say hello.
Hello, Tom.
Tom, in very brief terms, you're a family and divorce coach, but how do you describe to other people what you do?
Okay. My elevator pitch, I suppose. No, in short, I'm an internationally certified coach. My area of specialism is within divorce, separation, and family coaching. So in terms of what I actually do, what side of the nuts and bolts I want to do is actually assisting clients in understanding and overcoming negative emotions, such as anger, sadness, fear, even guilt. That's quite a big one. I do a lot of work with clients in terms of helping repair their communication strategies, so not just what they're projecting, but what they receive, to be able to communicate with their former partner in a more positive way, which is obviously imperative when you've got children involved in the middle. But also I do quite a lot of work in terms of rebuilding confidence, self-esteem, self-belief of people, and helping them rebuild their lives thereafter, and basically work through one of life's most difficult challenges.
Cool. So as an example, obviously without giving details of the client, kind of any specifics, what does a typical client come to you for?
I love this question because it gets asked a lot. In all honesty, there is no one client situation, as you can imagine with doing what I do, same as it would be for a divorce lawyer, for example. So I have people to come to me at all different stages of the cycle, whether they are about to enter into the situation of divorcing or separating. They might not even broached it with their partner yet. They may well be in the full throes of the legal aspect, and possibly going through for child arrangement orders or working out finances. I've also worked with a number of clients who it's actually been 4, 5, 6 years after their divorce and a different situation has come up. So as I say, no one is the same. Whilst there might be, let's say, some foundational level or kind of foundational basis of people's different reasons for divorcing, separating, for obviously obvious ones of, say, infidelity or irreconcilable differences, etc. Every single situation and the schematics that are involved of the people, not just the couple, but their children, their wider families, their work, their businesses, etc., is so different in every way. It's a bit like a snowflake, to be honest with you. No situation is ever exactly the same. So like I say, I've even had some people that have come to me that I suppose you always end up with two people in the camp, don't you, when a couple are separating. You have one camp that is the leaver and one camp that is the leavee. So it's a bit 50-50 as well, because you then get different perspectives and perceptions. So I've had clients that have come to me who, let's say, have been the leavee, where it's been very unexpected change in circumstances. From a mindset and an emotional perspective, they're not prepared. They didn't know this was coming. Their whole world has just been turned upside down, from where they live, who's got the kids, whether they work, whether they don't, etc. Likewise, you have the same clients on the other side who were the leaver in this scenario. Whilst they may have been prepared for this and building up to the situation, there is going to be reasons and things behind that. So they too will, even though they've been the one to make the decision and call time on the relationship, they're still going to be going through a bit of a roller coaster of emotions. And that might be a fear-based issue, it might be guilt, it might be a number of different things. So like I said, there's a whole host of reasons with divorce and separation coaching. One of the other areas that I'm quite well known for, and it's just a lot of clients through, is, not to use kind of coin the phrase, but someone else use it, but a blended family. So when you're putting two separate families together. I actually grew up in a blended family. I was 3-4 years old, grew up in a blended family of 7. You as well, not completely uncommon. It was a little bit more uncommon back in the 80s, I suppose. So I've been a child of that situation, but now later on I've also been a father, and I'm not particularly fond of the term, but stepfather. I don't even like the term stepkid personally. I prefer bonus children because they're an addition. So I've had this experience both as a child, as an adult, as a parent, as a co-parent at a distance, etc. So I've got this first-hand experience personally, but also then mixed with parts of my training from things like neurolinguistic programming, timeline therapy, and various other cognitive behaviour treatments, to work with adults and the parents in how to best approach the situation. So how to work together when working apart as a parent, if you like, or correctly co-parenting, as I tend to call it. So yeah, like I said, there's so many different areas. As I mentioned before, communication is a huge area around working with individuals, so around we all project and receive information differently, and that's your communication strategy, or what we esteem as your audio communications. Only 7% of it is actually verbal, so the rest of it is made up of body language, tonality, and physiology, and various other parts. So there's so many different areas that we work on. It's kind of difficult to say that's my client, if you like.
Yeah, but one of the reasons we wanted to kind of do this session was because we had a bit of discussion about how when people are having problems with their relationship at home, then that can actually completely change their management style. Do you want to expand a bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Such is life, where things, let's flip it the other side actually in terms of the question to start off with, because a lot of the time it could be work or business related, like if you're running your own business or you're running somebody else's business, or you're an employee working in a business. A lot of what happens in your day-to-day role, I suppose pre-lockdown, going into the office or the workplace or whatever it might be, adversely affects our home life as well. So it can affect how we act at home, how we snap at the kids or ignore our partner and things like that. And those kind of work stresses, well, the same is true conversely if you're going through a divorce or separation. I mentioned it before, I always use the phrase a roller coaster of emotion, because you're constantly going up and down. Now, if we think around how either as a business owner, as a team leader, a sole proprietor and self-employed and with self-motivate, whatever it might be, whatever your role, you will invariably take those issues that you're facing at home, those experiences and those stresses and tensions you feel, back to your job and to your business place. So as an example, there is a business owner that I was working with some time ago, who they ran a startup business. It was all, I suppose, typical, almost kind of startup, glossy Google type business, of beanbags everywhere and hot desking and everything. But everybody had a lot of autonomy, but within that role, they also had a lot of trust. And the business owner also had a lot of compassion for their team. Fast forward to a year or so later, when now their personal life is under some stress and strains due to a divorce and separating family and going through that challenging situation, it actually hugely impacted the way they ran their business, but also managed their team. They actually now became a micromanager. So they were very much around, when's this project going to be done? Are you on budget? Where's this? What we've been doing today? Which, funny enough, with lockdown timing also really didn't help, because now they're trying to manage people when they can't see what's going on with their other, let's say, outside influences, having an impact on that. So it changed attitudes, it changed behaviours, which impacted activity and productivity. It effectively shaped the new culture in a negative way for the business, and therefore the employees' experiences, which, as we all know, as business owners and employers or team leaders, has a knock-on effect to retention and productivity, etc. I've had other experiences, not necessarily business owners, but a client who works within medical research, medical science industry. Similarly, his career trajectory had always taken off and had been great for 10, 15 years, promotion after promotion, very highly regarded in their field, loads of accolades and every award under the sun. Again, fast forward quite a few years, once you start going through the challenging situation of a divorce and separation, and the situations and circumstances I won't go into that surrounded their child and that situation, it hugely impacted their attitude and their behaviours they brought to work, how they would interact, how they were focused on their work. And like I said earlier, we used to take our work stresses home and snap at the kids. It's now going the other way, and he's doing it in the workplace. And had the adverse effect of seeing a decline in productivity, and started to see that actually he now wasn't getting those promotions, and actually it's now having an impact that he's having to take a step back from certain projects and not being that go-to person, and things like that. So it can have real drastic impacts for employers and business owners. I've heard many a story from people that I coach, sometimes where I'm doing divorce separation coaching. If they own a business, I actually move into business coaching with them in some regard, because it's actually had such an impact where it's cost them tenders and it's cost them clients and things like that, because all these other deeply rooted emotional situations are hugely impacting their day and their normal primary focus, and some of their behaviours. It can have a huge knock-on effect.
Do they actually realise that that's what's happening? Because I can imagine it'd be very easy if you're in the midst of stuff going on at home, you kind of come to work thinking, I'm just going to throw myself into work, and don't realise that you've gone from this happy-go-lucky kind of, yeah, turn up when you like boss, to, I'm going to read the right act over every single little thing that goes wrong.
Yeah. When you say the question, I'd like to generally kind of realise, could be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, to be honest with you. Yeah. Again, just kind of not to flip the question, because that's kind of what coaches do to some respect. Not answering a question with a question, I promise. I will answer it. The same can be said the other way round of, let's say you've got work stresses and you're under pressure, you're over budget, and you've taken on someone else's project that was failing, or whatever the situation might be, and you take that situation home and you're snapping at the kids because you're tired, you're short-tempered, you're stressed, you're being short-tempered or even ignoring your partner, and things like that. Same to answer your question, do people generally realise? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes even when you do, the biggest part, actually one of the biggest problems around that scenario, if you like, on either side, whether it's work stresses at home, home stresses at work, isn't necessarily do they realise it. Even when people do realise it and are aware, it's also them still not knowing how or what to change. And that can be true on both sides. So I suppose for the most part, maybe more likely no, but there are those that are aware. It's more about they don't really know how or what to change. So it's becoming, that's where kind of coaching comes in, really, things like that. It's very useful resource in terms of becoming kind of consciously aware, if you like. I'm sorry, I do this a lot, but going consciously aware around our behaviours, and what we've forgotten or what we're choosing to ignore in terms of what's our responsibility, if you like. Also what we can and cannot control. And that little sentence there, even just being aware of what you can and cannot control, is relevant and pertinent in both personal and life scenarios, work scenarios. So I suppose if you think about it, I'm a bit old-fashioned, I quite like a lot of old phrases. So if you think around can't see the wood for the trees, again, that's where coaching can really come in and really help support. It is very different. Coaching is a bit like business mentoring for anybody who's ever had it. So it is a bit more challenging the demographic, if you like, or the preconceived idea of perception of things. I have a huge amount of respect and appreciation for additional talk therapies and counselling. I saw a counsellor myself when I was going through my divorce, because I was dealing with things around separation anxiety from being away from my sons. And the lady that helped me was fantastic in dealing with that side of things. Where I found coaching supported me, and where I find it why I focus on it with divorce and separation, is a lot of people are very, in our roles and our day-to-day workings, are quite process-based now, like a project map or a project timeline type thing. And that's where I found, for me personally, after doing counselling, that I found coaching through training as a coach, I realised I can use a lot of these tools and these resources for how I take my own responsibility, so that I can look for, three of my kind of favourite words: options, choices and opportunities. So where a coach can really help is helping the individual, and what it actually does is help people rather than teach. It helps you to learn as an individual where your strengths are, where your knowledge lies, what resources you have or need, and then where to go and get them. So a lot of the questions that we do, I've actually got a point I was actually going to make a little bit later on, it's around the questions that we ask ourselves, not even just the ones that we ask externally. So that's why I said that coaching can really help kind of challenge that preconceived idea of things to get you out of this like locked horn situation of digging your heels in, whether that's workplace, for your business, or for your divorce and your separation.
Okay, so say somebody's watching this and they're going, oh,
I hope so.
That might, yeah, somebody, one person.
Yeah, me.
Hi, Mum. And maybe they're kind of going, okay, I might need some help, but maybe I'm not quite there yet. Can you give some tips for somebody who's maybe kind of got a shift going on and knows that maybe the stress between either work and home, or her home and work, is impacting?
Okay.
And have you got any tips for how to kind of leave the problems at the door kind of scenario?
Yeah. Well, again, it's very situational, circumstantial. Before I kind of answer that, it goes back to how we all project and receive information. Okay, so I remember, I think I've done this with you before at a networking event we were at, and a couple of other people, and I was explaining to people around the amount of the volume of single bits of information the human mind takes in per second, and then what your unconscious mind is doing with it. So at the moment, my conscious mind doesn't need to be aware of the feeling of the chair on my back, or my watch on my shoulder, or the headphones in my ear. The second I mention it, I can feel it. Likewise, if someone's watching this now, I can say, if you're wearing glasses, now can you feel glasses hanging around the back of your ear? You'll feel them, but then it will go again, because what your unconscious mind is constantly doing is generalizing, distorting, and deleting. So the reason that I say that, mentioned that before, it's around the information that you project, but also what you receive. So the way to kind of do that, there's various different ways, and I can kind of teach a number of them, but creating your awareness in the first part kind of goes back to a bit what I was saying around understanding what you can and what you can't control. One of the earliest harder lessons I have to work through clients when coaching through is people say to me, can you get them to change this, or they're controlling, or them this. It's all their problem, their fault. It very well may be. However, as one client said to me recently, my ex is doing X, Y, and Z. How do I get to change this? And I say, okay, how long are you married? 15 years. Okay. How long were you before you got married? 5 years. So you've been together for 20 years. Yeah. Did you ever get them to change that? No. Well, how can I? I'm not their coach in the first place, so I don't know them. So how can I get them to change it? Exactly. So with this whole being aware of what you can and can't control, it also comes to things around a number of kind of words that I like to play around with, around your own responsibility and what you're responsible for, so what you can control. So even if you break down the word of responsible or responsibility and break it down, it's about what you are able, or your ability to choose to respond. A huge amount of the work that I do with people's communication, for example, is their reactions. Not their response, their reactions, their fight or flight. He's done this, she said that, blah, blah, blah. And then getting into that lock horns or that emotional reaction to it, not stepping back and looking at the solutions based. Like I said before with coaching, it's very much solution and option orientated. So the first steps is kind of, in terms of being aware, is thinking about things like your language. If we're talking around the divorce scenario, and you can use this in the workplace as well, if you've got a conflict or a situation. First step is around being aware of your language. So checking yourself, asking yourself, what am I about to say? Is it helpful? Does it offer up options and choices and those opportunities that we're talking about? So for me, the way that, and again, this is a personal opinion in the way that I've been trained to coach, I tend to stay away from questions that are based around a why. There is a time and a place for a why question. However, if you think around the basis of language patterns that you learn as a child, if you think of any why-based question when you were a kid, generally has a negative connotation. Why are you doing that? Don't do that. Why have you done this? Why haven't you emptied the dishwasher? Why is there towels on the floor? Why have you forgotten your PE kit? Even when you do that, you lean forward, your head goes down, you frown, your tone goes down. That in itself is quite combative. So for me, in coaching, even just the language side, looking for the options and opportunities, is starting to ask more thought-provoking questions. So think how-based questions. What, when, where, who. Right, so who can help you with this? How else could you approach this? If we did that, what could go right? What could go wrong? What support do we need? If you don't have all the resources and you're a bit stuck, who could we go to for? Where are they? Etc. Looking for that, so that brings up options and different avenues and choices, as opposed to, well, why are you doing that? Also, when you're asking someone why, you get defensive with your answer, so it's not just about the question. The answer isn't solutions based. Why are you doing it like that? You instantly, the wall comes up, you know, because that's what I wanted to do, because I said so, because I chose it, because I've been shown that way. Again, it doesn't offer up that option for support. Sorry, my email's popping up. I thought I closed it. IT, not my strongest point. Secondly, I mentioned a minute ago around questions why and tone going down. Tonality and pitch. If you think about a big CEO doing a presentation, I don't know, some conglomerate, Google, Facebook, whatever, you don't have an inspiring leader slouched over, talking down like that, monotone, staring at the floor, not making eye contact. Steve Jobs was brilliant for it, wasn't he? And not one of those people that brings up all these famous people, but he'd walk up and down the stage, he's engaging, he's even just speaking up, your tone goes up because your voice is up. It's more engaging because your tonality is changing, it's inviting as well. Brilliant. Rather than, why did you do that? Really interesting. How did you come to that decision? Talk me through the process. What was that? What made you do it in that way? That's really cool. I like that. Have you ever thought about adding in this, that, and the other? Yeah. You build a dialogue, and it's not combative. It's non-confrontational. It's engaging and involving the individual. So whether that's on a project at the workplace that's over a deadline, whether that is the school pickup, or who's getting them at Christmas this year, and things like that. So that's the second one. Third one is positioning, posture, and presence as well. Are you too close and in your face? Are you getting aggressive, showing your teeth, eyes glaring, things like that, all those kind of animalistic things? And it's true. Me and you do a lot of networking, Lee, for the people that don't know, that hopefully watching this. We do quite a lot of networking. See Buzz in the background, give him a shout out. And it's you do get people, and again, they're very unconsciously aware of maybe invading other people's space, and it's not that. Again, that might be how I'm obviously not in lockdown or camera. Back in the real world, when you could share the air. But I've actually had
conversations with women who have had very, especially kind of like petite women, having a very tall man, like literally leaning
towering over you. Yeah.
I've given them tips, because basically if you stand like that against them and put your foot out slightly, they can't do it without actually straddling your leg, in which case most men won't do that. And yeah, I know they don't mean it, but there are a lot of women who...
It's that unconsciously aware thing though, isn't it? So let's say the 6'5", obviously not me because I'm not, but 6'5", very muscular, very athletic guy is talking to a very petite 4'10", very svelte lady. And for him, he's because he can't hear her. So it's circumstance. It might be circumstantial. Okay, I'll give you another example in a minute, but that might be circumstantial. He might be hard of hearing, so he gets close and he's having to lean down. But again, for her, with the projection side, so it's about being aware about each other's comfort zones. Yeah. Another one is when I'm talking about body language. A lot of people say, well, when someone crosses their arms, they're not talking to me, they're not engaged. Okay, it's circumstance based and situation based. I might be talking to someone who's crossing their arm and holding it like that, and I might be thinking they're not engaged, they're not talking with me, they're They're closed off, they're switching off. That's the body language. It means they're not listening. Not necessarily. They might be a really keen squash player and have just lost the game of their life and suffer from tennis elbow. They're just actually supporting their arm and they're comfortable. So it's
apparently, as well,
substantial.
if you don't have arms on your chair, people are, especially people are more likely to cross their arms.
Hence the wing-back armchair. But going back into posture and positioning, you raised a really good point there, the ones that you've given to ladies. Your feet can say a lot about what you're doing as well. If I'm in back in the real world, if I'm in a physical real world, if I'm in a networking event, and this is where you're talking business, not a very emotional situation for a client per se, but I'm talking business and networking. If I'm talking to the client, I'm talking to me and you now, obviously this isn't combative, we're talking, we're getting on, everything's lovely. My feet are facing you, and I'm postured, I'm up straight, I'm engaged, and a number of other things, but also my feet are facing you. My feet are telling you, and also telling my own body, this is interesting, I'm listening to this. If I've got one foot pointing that way and the other one's just off a little bit to the side of you, my feet are telling my body and you, I'm not listening, I'm off. I'll see you later, I'm gone.
I was going to say, you're ready to run.
My body is saying, I'm out the door. I'm not listening to you, I'm out the door. So it depends where you go, but it's also mixed with other things as well. So you've got things within your body language around your eye contact. Again, it's circumstantial, situational as well. I'm not going to sit here and not blink and just stare at you in the eyes constantly. That would be quite off-putting. So it's all things together, but molded in the right way. So it's about that awareness and being consciously aware. So you learn to get to the unconsciously aware stage of just getting in that natural habit. The fourth and final, because I know I've gone on a bit, is active listening. So a lot of people use this sentence, but a lot of people don't really know what active listening really is. You can go off and Google it, to be honest with you, on YouTube. There's loads of talks around it. But it's really about what are you really listening to, with an amalgamation of all the things we just said, language that you're using, your posture and positioning, etc., type of questions you're answering in response. But what are you really listening to, and what are you really taking in? What do you really need to know and are retaining to show that, one, you are actually listening, but two, you're taking that on board. So some of that is repeating back what are the real core fine points. Someone's telling me what they do, and they've done a nice big 10-minute spiel. If they haven't done much pitching before, I would pick out those key points and go, right, so just so I'm sure, it would be, you focus on this and this, these are your target audience, these are the services you provide, this is your solution, type of thing. And just showing an active listening that you're taking that on board and repeating that back as well.
Cool. Okay. So just one last question on divorce. So you must have heard this as well. So many people have been saying that, oh, lockdown, divorce rate is going to go sky high, even though I don't think there's actually any evidence of that. I don't know. Have you seen any change in trends or kind of people's behaviour because of lockdown?
Lots, and in all different ways. I don't mean to be vague, and I apologise to everyone, but again, with the snowflake situation, there's so many variables and variants for doing something like this. I would say there's a bit of a yes and no to this, to be honest with you. I'm not avoiding the question, but no, necessarily, I would say with individuals at the moment, actual clients. Whilst I still have clients and new clients, I've had a number of clients that started and even completed their sessions during lockdown. We've never even met face to face. We've completed the whole thing online, which just means I can do it later at night, earlier in the morning, in between walking the dog. It saves them time because I haven't got to pay for travel with my clinic space, etc. I would say at the moment, unfortunately, I think just initially that first sort of 3-4 month period was where there was still obviously a lot of uncertainty for individuals with their finances, their jobs, furlough, redundancy. You could have in one household, the whole dynamic could have shifted from wife works in the city, and does 10, 12, 14 plus hours a day, leaves at 6, doesn't get home till 9. Dad works for the NHS, but just up the road and has always done the school run, and work part-time. Let's say she's been furloughed, or the business has gone, she's been made redundant, or something that stopped her from working. She's now at home with 3 kids, and his work that was part-time has now absolutely skyrocketed, and the whole dynamic of the family unit has changed, so therefore their communications will. So there have been so many different changes up and down. I think there's various kind of studies, I think, ongoing from what I tend to see and read, and there's a lot of articles, I would say, and you can Google on the news tab of Google to the cows come home. There'll be lots of different articles all over the different papers. I don't actually know of finite produced studies yet, because I think it's too early to tell, because you've also got, dependent on regions, and this is what I hear from the solicitors I partner with, there are some places where family courts haven't been affected at all, some that have drastically been affected, some that have been able to pivot or transition and are online, but there's now a backlog. So I think it'll still be a while until we see that, but I think that's like most things that are impacted, whether it be furlough, whether it be redundancies. I think it's similar. I think it will definitely have an impact. I actually had a couple come to me about 6 or 8 weeks ago now, who said, we've recognised we have changed during lockdown. Our family dynamics change, how we communicate has changed, some for good, some not so good. They recognise they don't want to go down that path, and have actually thought, actually now would be a good time. We need to figure out how to work together again. In actual fact, what was really interesting with them was, and they agreed with me, I say this to a lot of clients, a lot of the work that we do around your communications is a new compromise. When you meet someone and you're falling in love and you're buying a house and you're moving in together, we do learn to compromise on when they don't put the dishwasher on, or where they leave the dirty gym gear, or whatever, leaving the fridge door open, whatever it might be. We learn to compromise. I know, it's horrible, isn't it? But we learn to compromise and work together on these things. But that's fine, because it's all sunshine, lollipops and unicorns on a rainbow. When we're separating, especially where children are involved, in fact, paramount where children are involved, we still need to find a new way to compromise. Those people are still going to be involved in your life forevermore, whether your children are 5 or 35. And I say to a lot of people, when they say, oh look, we've worked out the school run and holidays and turn at Christmas as well, I say, it's brilliant, you've already started thinking around co-parenting. That's great. Okay, how many kids you got? 3. Okay, let's fast forward 15, 20, 25 years. You've got 3 kids, and your 3 kids have 3 kids. You've now got 9 grandchildren. How do you want to co-grandparent? 15, 20, 25 years down the line, your former partner and or you have likely got new partners, not necessarily the most recent one. There may be step siblings, there's going to be step grandparents, step aunties and uncles. Those 9 grandchildren are going to have 9 first birthdays, they're going to have 9 graduations, they're going to have 9 18s. How do you want that situation to be for them? And I think getting people to work around that change of mindset and compromise is quite important. The final point on what have I seen change, the biggest shift and change I've seen is actually with family law professionals that I partner with. So solicitors, mediators, even specialist wealth managers and IFAs that specialise in divorce, in their change of mindset, in how, I suppose, the forward-thinking ones of they can see a huge added benefit to what I do. I won't mention her because it's not a name dropping session, but there is a lady that I work quite closely with. She's fantastic. If anybody wants to find out who she is. And she's described me as her emotional outsourcer, where she has said if she's got a client on the phone or Zoom, and for 45 minutes, 40 minutes of it being, this has happened, they've done this is going on, and it's the emotional side of things or a situational thing. She says after 40 minutes, I've got 5 minutes worth of legal advice for him, and I'll say, it's actually a lot cheaper, and actually you'll get more out of it because he's certified to do so, to go and talk to Tom. And I can help focus on your actual legal aspects. Because I'm yet to meet a family law provider, I know a lot of people don't think this, but I'm yet to meet a family solicitor who doesn't care about their clients or take their client stuff home with them, like we all do in our jobs. Let's say my IT person looks after my email. Let's use that person as an example. When my email goes awry, they take that stress. I wonder. She's brilliant as well. But again, they take that stresses home. So do family law professionals. So one of the biggest changes in shifts I've seen is their change of mindset and perspective to this, and what I do can be an added resource to support their client moving forward, and create a potentially better outcome. Because going back to that whole what you can and can't control, and when people say to me about changing or controlling or getting the other party to change, you can't control that. And it's about helping you learn to work with that, understand it, learn to deal with it, but so that it doesn't cause you stresses and strains and emotional hardship and affect your work and your business, but still let you take control. They've got to, that's their cross to bear. That will be their issue that will come up later in life for them at some point, and they'll have to deal with that. You can focus on you and look after yourself, and that, I think, that's the biggest change.
I always like to kind of talk to people about karma. You know, I know it's a very abstract kind of thought, but the amount of people that, if they are being that bad and that unreasonable, get their karma, it just happens. Or just sometimes you have to be a little bit patient. So, but yeah, and also sometimes that kind of makes you think, oh, I don't have to do anything. Somebody else will do it for me. Okay, thank you very much, Tom, Mr. Divorce Coach. Lovely to chat to you. For anyone who wants more information about what Tom does, then please go to meliorminds.co.uk. Do you want to spell that for them, Tom?
Yep, that's MELIOR, Melior, and Minds, MINDS. Melior is Latin for improved, if anybody wanted to know why it has such a strange company name. So.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And we will, yeah, thank you very much for your time. It was great information. Cheers very much.
Thank you for inviting me. Bye.